All right, what's going on, everyone? Let me send this tweet, and then we'll get going. All right. What's up, everyone? I'm Cale Hammond. So we've got another massive slate of tennis down under. First things first, Novak Djokovic will play the Australian Open. It's going to be fascinating to see how he responds after going through that whole saga and like the potential negative crowd reaction, but we'll get there when we get there. We've got a lot of tennis to focus on this week. So last week I told everyone to cut their stakes in half, and the same goes for this week. Just cut them in half and then cut them in half again. There's no reason to dig a big hole in weeks 1 and 2. Just bad for the mentality heading into a Grand Slam where the opportunities to make money is far greater than any other tournaments of the year. The sports books, they let you bet more on the Grand Slam matches. They set lines for people in the general public to bet them too. Like a good example of that would be Coco Gauff for Sloane Stephens at last year's U.S. Open. You know, Coco Gauff's the golden child. The sportsbooks know that like casual fans will bet on Coco Gauff because she's the next Serena, and she comes in with like Sloane was like plus 250 or something against Coco Gauff, which was, I would argue, that was the worst line of the year, men's or women's, last year. But you get things like that in the Grand Slams. That's when you really need to attack and make some money, because there's so many matches going on and there's so many opportunities. With 3 out of 5 people get fatigued, there's just a lot of opportunities. So don't fuck it up in the first 2 weeks like I am beginning to do by betting on Marcos Giron. So yeah, cut the stakes in half. You get it. That's nothing new. Especially find your rhythm first and then make a little bet. Sometimes Sydney Fife said this well, Moneyline Chad. I love talking to him about betting, and he's just like, look, when you're running cold, the best bet you make a lot of times is the one you don't make. So like sometimes the ones you don't make are way more important than the ones you do make. So yeah, another thing before we get into the matches, I want to talk about live underdogs, because if you're really trying to have a good week betting tennis and really, make some legitimate money, you got to have a handful of big live underdogs. So be on the lookout for people that are playing well, don't look fatigued, and are down a set. The way that live algorithm works in tennis, if someone plays really well and they lose the first set, and they're still looking, confident and competing hard, the odds just shift too much in general. And, that's how it goes. But be on the lookout. Karen Khachanov was a good one against Monfils in that final. He lost, and that was super tough to watch because he just completely choked, serving 4-5 in both sets. But Monfils was gassed. There was one point at, I think, 4-3 or 3-2 in the second. Monfils had 40-30, and he was huffing and puffing, and he went for a second serve ace, which that was a great sign. The bet lost, which fucking sucked, but there's no reason, if you're up a set and on serve in a final, to go for a second serve, a huge second serve ace. Credit to Monfils for hitting it. But if Karen in the last game, he missed 3 short forehands, just yanked. Terrible from him, because he just needed to make Monfils work. But that's Khachanov for you. So, he will give great opportunities for live bets because he is in great shape, but he is a bit of a choke. So congrats to Monfils on his final title, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to win another one, but incredible from him. If Karen won that set, though, it would have been a 6-1 or 6-0 third set. Like, Monfils was done, and Karen just gifted it to him. So that one was tough, but be on the lookout for live dogs, especially when there's tons of matches going on, because that's really, you're not going to win too much money betting, minus 130, minus 120 guys. You got to have live dogs. So I wanted to, before we get to the matches, discuss my buddy Marcos Giron, because I was totally expecting the continuation of his, breakout season last year. But unfortunately, I think that he was too, because when you watch him play these matches, you see him forcing it. you see him getting frustrated way too early. And you just see the expectation of him, coming out and beating these people is there. And then that doesn't happen. Then you get in your head a little bit and you get frustrated. And so Marcos is not a guy who shows that much emotion on court. And see him with negative reactions early on is super concerning. His loss against Berankis last week was understandable. First match of the year against a guy who won 2 qualifying matches. But his performance yesterday against Jordan Thompson was honestly tough to watch if you had money on him. Because he won 10 of the first 11 points, was a point away from going up a double break 3-0, but he was like getting frustrated even while he was dominating. And then when he didn't break the second time, you could see that. You could see him be like, uh-oh. And then he won a close game, and then, he got broken, and that's the second time that Marcos has lost the first set by a break after being up a break, which means that's 2 breaks in the tail end of the first set, which is something like that is extremely concerning for a player. So, I'm down on the year because I bet big on Marcos twice. Everything else has been whatever, but that's tough, when you pick the wrong horse to start the year. And that's something why you should really, really, really not bet too much in the first rounds in general, because you need to see these guys gain confidence throughout the tournament. You need to see how their game responds to the conditions. Marcos has no business losing to Jordan Thompson. Like, he can sit back and make balls all day. Jordan Thompson needs you to commit 1 to 2 errors a game, and then he's a really good, tough player. But when you don't give him much, he's not that great. So that was just frustrating. But I will say, his kick serve, the court, the conditions are pretty good for him. He's in good shape. And he's a great athlete. So he gets a lot of balls back. He comes up with some great shots. But if you're just steady, man, Marcos shouldn't really be losing to him. So that's concerning. So I'm going to take a break and lay off Marcos. Once again, it's going to be good for his price moving forward because he will get hot. He's hitting his forehand so clean and he's moving well. It's just the confidence isn't there. And so we can't bet a tennis player without confidence right now. So conditions, Sydney is playing really quick. Everything's warm in Australia. Adelaide's really hot this week. And there's no question that Sydney is a little bit quicker than Adelaide. But look, these Australian hard courts are awesome. They reward huge serving. They reward aggressive play. And they reward clean strikes. And so be on the lookout for that. Moving forward to start the matches. So we got match 1. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. John Davis says, any particular player better at beginning of season and then typically fade? That is a good one. I know in opposite, Hugo Gaston from France is amazing in October and November and typically not very good at the beginning of the season. That's a good question. I'll have to look into that. I think I'll look into it and we'll discuss that a little more tomorrow. But I mean, does anyone in the chat have any thoughts what players, typically start hot at the beginning of the season and then fade? I think that's a pretty good question because there's definitely some value in there. Feel free to hop in the chat if there's something going. All right, let's get to the matches. All right, first up we have Corentin Moutet versus Jan-Lennard Struff. Struff minus 128. This is a tough match to predict. Struff's just tough in general. Moutet's won 2 tough matches since withdrawing due to injury, but that injury concern is still there, so I think this price is pretty fair. The free point disparity for Struff, if he serves well, is nice. I love taking that angle when you know a guy is going to get 15 to 20 more free points a match. It's just a lot easier to win when you're getting free points, especially the way the court's playing. If you bet Struff, I would go money line. I would not take the spread. I would not lay games with him. I would just hope for an outright win. But yeah, that's a tough one. I might think about betting Struff, but I can't really get there yet or recommend it yet. SoonWoo Kwon versus Lloyd Harris. Harris is -2. He hasn't really played much to start the season. Kwon's played a little bit, hasn't done great. And yeah, so I think this might be the play of the day already. I've seen some people already on Lloyd Harris -2. the conditions are super hot and they reward big serving. So with Lloyd Harris, you have a guy who's in phenomenal shape and who serves humongous. With these balls, they're going to be so lively. In this heat, he's probably going to rack up 15 to 20 aces today, no problem. So I think Lloyd Harris is a great bet. I can't argue. I don't think Kwon. I think he's a little overrated. I've seen him play some terrible matches before. I think indoor hard is his best surface, where it's just completely clean and it's all about the ball striking. But I like Harris too. The free point disparity, he should have at least 15, 20 aces in this match. Next up, Lorenzo Musetti versus Benjamin Bonzi. This one is a tough one. I can't really pick a player either way. I think Musetti's terribly overrated, and I think Bonzi's very good, but Bonzi has yet to show that he can actually have success on the ATP level. If it's a challenger, I'm taking Bonzi all day there, but at ATP level, I just can't really get on it. I think that over 22 and a half games, I can't argue against the over in this particular matchup because neither player is very clutch. So I think you're going to see, a lot of holds and not much, if they get up, I don't think you're going to see anyone run away with it. So I don't like betting over unders that much, but that one looks pretty good. I might have to throw a tiny little bit on that. Next up, Alex Bolt versus Stevie J Johnson. So Stevie J is -3.5, which I'm frustrated. I think this is a good line by them because Stevie J is playing pretty well. And the conditions, once again, these balls are so lively. They're taking spin. His serve is so good in these conditions. And he doesn't really struggle. You'd think he'd struggle against lefties, but he really doesn't. It doesn't really bother him, lefty or righty, because he's going to slice that backhand every time. And honestly, it might be easier to slice a one-handed backhand when the ball's going cross that way as opposed to an inside out. So, yeah, Stevie J is the better player, but I'm not sure how you can lay 3.5 games given how many tie breaks he plays. So if he gets down a break or loses a set, or even if Stevie J gets down 15-40, I might look to bet him live because the conditions are great for him. He's just a much better player than Bolt. Forehand's bigger. He's a better athlete than Bolt. He's just better at tennis than Bolt. And it's nice to see him, get a little bit of confidence back because watching him in college, I wish I overlapped a couple of years in college, and he was the best college player of all time by far. The confidence that he had was just incredible. So it's good. I really want to see him get back because he really is a top 100 talent. He has no business being outside the top 100. Next up, Thiago Monteiro versus Yoshihito Nishioka. This is an interesting matchup. I think that Nishioka can totally cause problems for Monteiro because Monteiro is just standard game. If he gets a look at a forehand, he's going to be aggressive. He's not one to just roll the forehand in. He loves being aggressive with that forehand. And so you have Nishioka, who's a classic counterpuncher, versus a pretty aggressive, guy who's playing well on hard court, but I'm still going to refer to Monteiro as a clay courter. I just think that, Nishioka's speed and defense, he's going to get to a lot of balls. He's going to put Monteiro in tough finishing situations. And Monteiro is a horrific volleyer. So I think that, if he's not moving forward that well, I think this is a great matchup for Nishioka, but then you have Nishioka. He's been one of the worst top 100 players in the world the last few months. So I'll probably be avoiding this one, even though I do think Nishioka matches well against Monteiro just because, he's a counterpuncher and Monteiro's, finishing ability at the net is not that good. So in his anticipation, so I think he'll be able to read where Monteiro is going. He'll be able to take some of those backhands line, and then Monteiro's going to hit a loopy lefty forehand, and then Nishioka will be able to get on the front foot and play. But it's tough to bet on Nishioka after he's just been losing. Moving on to ATP Sydney, Chris O'Connell versus Sebastian Baez. So Baez beat Daniel Altmaier in the qualifying round, and now he plays another big serving, aggressive guy with a one-hander. I think O'Connell's more suited to the fast courts than Altmaier is. Altmaier likes a slow court for sure. So this is tough, but Sebastian Baez plus 103. If you want to bet Baez, I can't really argue against it. I think you have a future top 20 player versus Christopher O'Connell, who can play some phenomenal tennis, but just clearly has a limited ceiling. So if you want to bet Baez there at an underdog price, I think that's fine. I just wouldn't go too heavy. Next up, Jordan Thompson versus Reilly Opelka. Opelka has not been playing well recently. I think that just from he obviously loves, off the court activities, doing cool stuff. Tennis is not the biggest deal for him. It's more for him a way to pay the bills and save up money. I don't think he's necessarily I don't think he loves tennis like a lot of these guys, but with his serve, beat anyone in any given day. I think minus 164 for Opelka. Like, he's been so bad. This is a pretty attackable price. He should beat Jordan Thompson just because of his firepower. But it's tough. It's tough to bet him right now. So, I'm probably just going to sit back and watch this one. Any over game total bet on Jordan Thompson is a fine play, but I can't get there right now with Opelka. All right, next up, Jiri Vesely versus Brandon Nakashima. Nakashima, I have him -3 on Bovada. If you can get Nakashima -2.5, if that's available, I have no problem betting whatever you want on that. -3 with Vesely is tough just because his serve, he's a tie-break prone player. But Nakashima, I think that we're talking about players who might start the year hot. I think he's one of them because he gained a lot of confidence last year. And this guy is all tennis all the time. He's a machine. So I think that's a fine play. The matchup with the lefty forehand to his backhand, he'll be able to, dictate with his backhand and hit line, hit cross, and get Vesely on the run, force Vesely to defend. He's not going to let Vesely sit there, and stand in the middle of the court where he's really good. Vesely's not that good, on defense. He's not the best mover. So I like Nakashima here. -3 is a good line. If you have -2.5, take it. But, -3 is entirely plausible. But I think I might throw a little bit on Nakashima just to see how he starts the year. You don't want to miss Nakashima if he's, on a roll. You definitely want to be on him from the beginning. Next up, Federico Delbonis versus Albert Ramos Vinolas. We have ARV -145. Yeah, I think that's a fine bet. But you have two guys who much prefer clay playing on a hard court. I really don't know. So I won't spend too much time on that matchup. If you guys have any thoughts, feel free to chime in. I think if I had to pick, obviously I would pick Ramos Vinolas just because Delbonis is sometimes he just cannot find the court for a couple games, and Ramos Vinolas is pretty steady. But yeah, not for me. Next up, Miomir Kecmanovic versus Stefano Travaglia. So Miomir Kecmanovic was horrific at the end of the season. He definitely lost a ton of confidence. I have no problem betting Travaglia +111 underdog price, and just, he's so bad at the end of the year. I'm comfortable taking a flyer on Travaglia and seeing what happens. Kecmanovic, maybe he finds it, but after last year, I think he's a pretty solid fade until further notice. Next up, Alexei Popyrin versus Pedro Martinez. We got a lot of good underdogs today. I think a lot of underdogs are going to be able to get the job done today. So Popyrin versus Martinez. Martinez, I think he's a fantastic player. He in every point. He doesn't like to, give away free points. He's a great competitor. He's a grinder. And last week we saw we hit when we faded Popyrin against Greek Sport, just because Greek Sport was so solid and consistent from the baseline. I think if you have a guy who's not giving Popyrin unforced errors, then the errors really are going to, start racking up for Popyrin. So I think that I'm going to stick with that angle for the time being, that if Popyrin is playing somebody who is extremely solid and not giving him much, I think you're going to see a lack of patience from Popyrin. He's going to start to spray a little bit. And once Martinez gets a little belief, maybe gets a break, he's tough. So he's a great competitor, and I can't really say the same about the Aussie. Next up, Davidovich Fokina versus Dusan Lajovic. So these are just both nightmares to bet. But Fokina, if he starts strong and starts well, yeah, it's tough. If things get tight, you cannot trust the guy at all. So I won't be on this pre-match, but if Fokina wins the first set comfortably, I will have no problem taking a -1.5 in the second set if you can get it versus Lajovic if he loses the first, because throughout Dusan Lajovic's career, he's winning about 10% of the matches that he loses the first set, which is not very good. He's the worst in the top 100 when it comes to losing the first set. The percentage of times he comes back and wins is rock bottom. So, yeah, he's not a big fighter. If things get tight, this is one thing that you guys should remember this, because it's worked for me a couple times before, is that Davidovich Fokina, his backhand is better than his forehand. His forehand is a big shot, but it's an erratic shot. His backhand's money. And so when things get tight, and he has a tell where if early in the point, if Fokina is crushing his backhand and going for huge backhand winners early on in the point, that tells you that he's not very confident in his forehand in a tight situation. So when he does get that one backhand, he's looking to finish the point with the backhand, which is never really a good idea, because it's just forehand's just a bigger, better shot than backhands. Backhands need to be solid and consistent. If you're just going for clean winners on the backhand, that's a dangerous strategy. So look out for that. If it gets tight and Fokina's up a break and he starts choking a little bit, double faulting, missing some easy forehands, and when he starts going way too big on the backhand is when you need to bet against him. We had a big hit last year with Vasilashvili down 4-1, down a set in 4-1. We hit Vasilashvili like plus 800 against ADF, and that was awesome. So something to be aware of, but both these guys are pretty sketchy to bet on. Next up, Maxime Cressy versus Adrian Manarino. We have Cressy -2.5. What a week for him. I expect it to keep going. I have no problem. Either way, look, I have really no idea on this one. If you like Cressy -2.5, I can't argue against that. If you like Manarino to cover the spread, maybe a letdown after Cressy's first final, I understand that angle as well, because Manarino handles pace so well. If Cressy's serve is untouchable, yeah, it's going to be tough. But Manarino loves pace, and he has no problem handling Cressy's slice. He loves the low shots. He can create angles that other players can't, so he will be able to stretch out Cressy, make him hit shots on the run, which is not Cressy's strength. So a 6-6 is in play here. So I really don't want to get burned, by 0.5 games either way. I think this one might be close. Next up, Victor Durasovic versus Andy Murray. We talked about this last year. Andy Murray's -5. Don't do that. Don't lay 5 games with Andy Murray. Andy Murray's the guy now. I'm trying not to bet him pre-match for the rest of the year. I think with him and his hip, you never know how he's going to be physically. You have to see him in action. You have to see him moving swiftly and hitting great shots first, and hitting his forehand well first. Then you can bet on him. But I have lost so many pre-match Andy Murray bets. I think I'm like 1 of my last 5 betting him pre-match, so I'm not going to do it. If you have success, go right ahead, but I can't do it. That's it for the ATP matches. A couple of quality matches I want to point out. I think that Mark Polmans over Geoffrey Blancaneau is a great play. Blancaneau has these big strokes, and Polmans has nice compact strokes. He plays really well on a quick hard court. Blancaneau's best surface is a slower surface, so he has time to wind up and hit huge ground strokes. If you can rush Blancaneau, he's not that great. He's getting better, but I still think clay is his best surface. So I don't mind the home guy in this. Basically a pick 'em. I think Polmans is a slight favorite, but I think that's a good play. So I'm going to be on that as well. And then I do like Timofey Skatov is worth a look over Dane Sweeney, just because he's -1.5. I think that's not the worst bet in the world. Dane Sweeney's a super aggressive player. He's got a huge lefty serve, slices all the time. But Skatov, I think that Sweeney's aggression will probably play right into his hands. He's a great mover. I think he's a sort of a mini rising star. who should, once he cracks the top 100, I expect Scott to have to stay there for a long time. I think he's a good player, and I think he's a great competitor too. So I think that he'll be able to react a lot in this match. I think he's going to be just fine. Playing a decent amount of defense because Sweeney's a super aggressive player. So yeah, to sum up, I like a lot of dogs today. We skipped Botic, Van de Zandschulp versus Marton Fucsovics. So Botic is minus 141, which I don't quite understand that price. I understand it because I would love to bet Botic as an underdog here, but they're really not letting you do that. I think they realize that he's a legit top 40, top 50 guy. And Fucsovics is just tricky to bet in general. You really never know from match to match with him. But it is going to be hot. Fucsovics is in fantastic shape. So if this does go 3 sets, I don't mind Marton Fucsovics and his fitness because the guy's just so shredded. Such a good athlete against Botic. So yeah, if Botic doesn't win this in straights, I think that Fucsovics has a very good chance to outlast him in the 3rd set. And there's definitely pre-match value on Fucsovics too. I don't like betting Fucsovics that much because he's just pretty random in general. But I think Botic minus 140 against an experienced player like this just is a little too rich for me. So yeah, that's about it. I think to sum up, I like Travaglia plus 111. I like Lloyd Harris minus 2, and I like Struff money line just because of the free point disparity. But you're not going to catch me betting a substantial amount on a Struff match. I just don't think, unless he's playing Shapovalov in the first round of a Grand Slam. I like Baez plus 103. He could totally lose O'Connell. O'Connell plays some good tennis, but I think Baez, like I said before, you have a future top 20 guy versus a guy who's never going to sniff the top 20. So I don't mind that play just from a long-term perspective. And if Nakashima, if you can find him minus 2.5, I have him minus 3. So if here's what you should do. Then you should wait and live. If Jiri Vesely holds first game, then Nakashima should not be a minus 3 favorite still. I think that's the way to attack this one. Hope that Vesely serves first, hold serve, and then you can dump on Nakashima spread. I think that's a good strategy. So yeah, Pedro Martinez plus 165. I think he's a pretty decent underdog there. So yeah, I like a lot of dogs today. Martinez, Travaglia, Baez, and Nakashima minus 2.5 if you can get it is good. And Lloyd Harris minus 2 I think is the play of the day just because he's in great shape. The conditions he's going to love, so lively. His big strike is going to cause a lot of damage there. And I just don't think Kwon has the serve. I think he's going to be able to breeze through these service games and then, get to rip a couple shots. If they land, he has a chance to really hit Kwon off the court. So yeah, that's going to do it for me today. Best of luck, everyone. And once again, do not bet your normal amount in weeks 1 and 2 of the season. Cut your stakes in half and then cut them half. And again, you just want to watch all these players before you can really have a chance to make some money in the Australian Open. And trying to make money week 1, week 2 is a fool's errand. You bet smart, bet a lot of different matches small, and try and hit your stride. Midweek Australian Open. And that's all I've got for you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been a blast, and I'll see you guys either later tonight or tomorrow. If they get the odds out for all the Tuesday matches, I might try and crank one out. So thanks so much, everyone, and best of luck.